Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This episode is so important because I'm going to be going into why I shoot in RAW and why you should be too. I will first go over the difference between RAW versus JPEG and then why shooting in RAW, the things that you can do with that, like saving the image if it's too dark and too bright, the white balance, the highlights and shadows, and those kinds of things. If we haven't met yet, hi, I'm Kayla Brent. I'm a motherhood photographer and founder of Mom Photography School, where I teach moms how to take gorgeous everyday photos of their families. And I also have a course called Editing Essentials. And in that course, I have a whole lesson over RAW versus JPEG and how our photography and editing journey really starts before we ever take a picture. And it's really how we are shooting our images. Are you shooting them in RAW or are you shooting them in JPEG? So let's go over the difference in RAW versus JPEG files. And before we do that, I want to make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel. Go ahead and click below. Make sure you subscribe so you can get all the mom photography tips and mom hacks every single week in your inbox. So RAW files. RAW files are massive files. They're huge. And in Editing Essentials, I go over the pros and cons of each of them. And a con of the RAW file would be that it's so big. It takes up a lot of memory on your SD cards, but that's a really easy fix because they make massive SD cards very affordably these days. So it's a big, huge file. So it takes up a lot of room, but it has a lot of information. And all that information allows you to fix the image if you shot it incorrectly. So if it's too dark, you can save it. If it's too bright, you can save it. All those things. Of course, if it's too blurry, you can't save that. There's no Photoshop for blurry photos, but you can save the most common mistakes, and that is the exposure being off, it being too bright and too dark. If you're shooting in JPEG, there's a chance that you might not. They are compressed files, they are smaller files, they have less information. So this is kind of the analogy that I like to use for RAW versus JPEG. Say you're going to make a dress, okay? Just go with me here. There's a point. Say you're going to make a dress and you go to the store and you only get enough fabric to make the dress. Like the exact amount of fabric that you need, maybe just a little bit more, like a couple inches here, a couple inches there, but pretty much you just get what you need. Okay, there's that. Or you can go to the store and you get your fabric to make your dress, but you get ample. Like you get, like, I'm probably going to mess up. Like let's just go ahead and count on me needing a little extra. I'm going to get all the fabric. I'm going to get this fabric and that fabric, and I'm going to get lots of all of it. That's kind of the difference between RAW and JPEG. JPEG would be of course, the small amount of fabric. You only have a little bit of wiggle room to save the image if you shot it wrong. Whereas a JPEG, you have a lot of information. So if something is wrong, the white balance is off, the exposure's off, you can fix it and it looks really, really good. There have been images that have been almost black, like totally dark, that I was able to save because I had so much information. You can save it in Photoshop, in Adobe Camera Raw. So that is the difference between a RAW versus JPEG in that sense. I also want to say this, a con of a RAW file is you can't do anything with it until you process it. Like you can't take your SD card to the grocery store and print a RAW file off of the SD card. You can't email a RAW file and the person actually be able to open it or print it or do anything with it. All RAW files have to be converted to JPEG in some way. And most people do this by putting it in Lightroom or Photoshop or something like that. So big deal to shoot in RAW because of the fact that you can save images. The number one thing is the exposure that you can save quickly and easily. The next is the white balance. If you've ever had an image that was like very yellow or very blue, especially if you're inside, they're usually very yellow from the lighting. If you ever have that, super easy fix in Adobe Camera Raw. You can, of course, I know professional photographers like, do it in camera. I get it. But when we're taking pictures at a birthday party and just an average mom wanting good pictures, you can save these photos. You're not worried about your white balance. Set that thing on auto. No big deal, because if you're shooting in RAW, you can fix it post-production. Also, there are the highlights and the shadows. So this is the highlights being the brightest parts of the photos, and then the shadows being the darkest parts of the photos. So this is really helpful, especially if you are shooting and there's a lot of sun, like there's a big bright sun behind your child. So you are taking the image, but it's distracting because there's a big, huge light or sun or something's going on back there. You can bring the highlight slider down and or bring it up if you need to. And there's just a lot of flexibility whenever you are shooting in RAW. So there you have it. There is the big difference why you should be shooting in RAW. You have a lot more chance of being able to save your images. Again, I have a whole lesson over this in my course, Editing Essentials. You can check that out below. And if you have any questions, I want to know, what do you shoot in? First off, do you shoot in RAW? You shoot in JPEG? Let me know, and let me know why down in the comments below. And what are your biggest editing questions? I would love, love, love to make a YouTube video just for you to answer those questions. So comment below and let me know. I also have other editing videos that you can check out on my channel that have to do with editing and why I use Photoshop and not Lightroom. That's a very unpopular opinion. You can check that out and I'll link that below. I cannot wait to see y'all next time right here on the YouTube channel. Bye, friends.